The north is cold and full of whispers.
The great hall of River Run rang with the sound of victory. 50 lords and knights filled the chamber, their voices raised in celebration. They had broken the siege, captured Jaime Lannister himself at the Whispering Wood, destroyed half the Lannister army at the Battle of the Camps. The River Lords and Northern Bannermen stood shoulder to shoulder, cups raised, toasting the young wolf who had delivered them their first real victories of the war. Robb Stark sat in the high seat beside his uncle Edmure Tully, looking older than his 15 years. The weight of command had aged him. Catelyn watched her son from across the hall and thought, was it war that made him grow so fast, or the crown they want to put on his head? Because they did want to crown him. She could see it in their eyes, hear it in their voices. The great Jon had been making speeches all evening about northern independence, about how the South had never understood them, about dragons being dead and gone. But first, there was other business to attend to. Sir Brynden Tully, the Blackfish, stood and raised his hand for silence. The hall quieted gradually, men still laughing and drinking but turning their attention forward. "My lords," Brynden said. His voice carried authority earned through decades of command. "We have won great victories, broken our enemies, but now we must decide what comes next. News has reached us from King's Landing. Lord Eddard Stark is dead, executed on Joffrey's orders." The hall went silent, completely silent. The news had arrived by Raven that morning, but this was the first time it had been announced publicly to the assembled lords. Robb's face went white, then red. His hands gripped the arms of his chair so tightly, Catelyn heard the wood creak. "That's twice," the great Jon rumbled from his seat near Robb. "Twice the Lannisters have murdered the hand of the king. First, Jon Arryn, now Ned Stark. And both times they've gotten away with it because southern kings are too weak or too corrupt to seek justice. Lord Eddard was the finest man I ever knew," Lord Rickard Karstark said. His voice was rough with grief. He had lost 2 sons at the Whispering Wood, and now learned that the man he'd followed south was dead. "The North has lost its lord. The realm has lost its honor. Then we give the North a new lord," the great Jon said. He looked directly at Robb. "A young lord. A strong lord. A lord who knows how to win battles and punish oathbreakers. My father," Robb's voice broke. He stopped, tried again. "My father served King Robert faithfully, died serving the realm. We can't just—" "Your father served a king who was murdered by his own wife," Sir Mark Piper interrupted. "Served a realm that executed him as a traitor when he was the most honorable man in the 7 kingdoms. Forgive me, Lord Robb, but your father's service bought him nothing but a headsman's sword." Catelyn wanted to speak, wanted to defend Ned's memory, but she also knew Mark Piper was right. Ned had done everything correctly, served faithfully, acted honorably, sought justice, and it had killed him. Before anyone could continue, the great doors of the hall opened. A maester entered, moving quickly, his face pale. He carried a leather case, the kind used for important documents. "My lords," the maester said, "forgive the interruption, but a rider has just arrived from White Harbor, from Lord Wyman Manderley. He carries letters from—" the maester hesitated, "from Lord Eddard Stark, written before his death." The hall erupted, everyone talking at once, demanding to know what the letters said. Robb stood so quickly his chair fell backward. "Give them to me," Robb commanded. The maester approached and handed over the case. Robb opened it with shaking hands. Inside were several sealed letters. He broke the first seal, addressed to him personally, and began reading. Catelyn watched her son's face change, saw confusion, shock, disbelief, then something that looked like grief mixed with wonder. "What does it say?" Catelyn asked. "Robb, what did your father write?" Robb looked up. His gray eyes, Ned's eyes, were wet with tears. "He's telling the truth. About Jon. About everything." "What truth?" the great Jon demanded. "What about Jon Snow?" Robb's hands trembled as he held the letter. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Jon isn't my father's bastard. He never was. Jon is—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "Jon is my cousin, not my half-brother, my cousin." The hall went deathly quiet. "Explain yourself, boy," Lord Rickard Karstark said. Robb looked at the letter again as if needing to confirm what he'd read. Then he looked at the assembled lords and spoke words that would change everything. "Jon Snow is the son of Lyanna Stark, my father's sister. and Rhaegar Targaryen. For 3 heartbeats, no one moved. No one spoke. The words hung in the air like smoke. Then chaos erupted. Targaryen, the dragon prince's whelp? Rhaegar raped your aunt, and you want us to— Silence! Caitlyn's voice cut through the noise. She had stood without realizing it. Every eye in the hall turned to her. Let him finish. Let Robb explain before you start shouting. Robb nodded gratefully to his mother. He held up the letter. My father writes that Lyanna wasn't kidnapped. She went with Rhaegar willingly. They loved each other. They married in secret, a proper marriage before a heart tree, witnessed by Rhaegar's friends. When she died giving birth to Jon at the Tower of Joy, she made my father promise to protect her son, to keep him safe from King Robert, who would have killed any Targaryen child he could find. So Ned Stark lied, the great Jon said slowly. Claimed the boy as his bastard to hide the truth. To protect him, Robb said firmly. To keep his promise to his dying sister. My father lived with dishonor. Let everyone believe he'd fathered a bastard and broken his wedding vows. Because it was the only way to keep Jon alive. Lord Jonos Bracken stood. This is madness. You're telling us that Jon Snow, the boy we all thought was Ned's bastard, is actually a Targaryen? The grandson of the Mad King Aerys? The son of Lyanna Stark, Robb corrected. My father's nephew. Stark blood, with dragon blood mixed in, Magie Mormont said. The Lady of Bear Island's voice was hard. Rhaegar's blood, the man who stole a Stark girl and started a war that killed thousands. He didn't steal her, Robb said. The letter is clear. Lyanna chose to go with him, chose to marry him. My father writes that she loved Rhaegar, that she was happy with him until the war came and Robert killed him at the Trident. Your father writes pretty words, Lord Karstark said. His voice was cold. But Rhaegar Targaryen was married to Elia Martell. He had children with her. How could he marry Lyanna if he already had a wife? Aegon the Conqueror had 2 wives, Robb said. Targaryen kings practiced polygamy when Aegon had dragons, the great Jon interrupted. Dragons made polygamy acceptable because no one could argue with dragonfire. Rhaegar had no dragons. Just a harp and pretty words and a belief that prophecy mattered more than vows. Catelyn's mind was racing. She remembered the promises she'd made herself about Jon Snow. How she'd hated him, wished him gone, said terrible things to him. And all that time, he hadn't been Ned's betrayal at all. He'd been Ned's nephew, her nephew by marriage. But he was also something far more dangerous than a bastard who might threaten Winterfell. He was a Targaryen, a potential claimant to the Iron Throne, a threat to the entire realm. Where is Jon now? Catelyn asked. Her voice was steady despite the turmoil in her heart. Castle Black, Robb said. He took the Black, joined the Night's Watch, then he's no threat to anyone, Sir Edmure Tully said. The Night's Watch vow renounces all claims. I shall wear no crowns and win no glory. Even if Jon wanted to press a claim, which I doubt, his vows prevent it. Vows can be broken, Mage Mormont said, or set aside, or declared invalid if the man who swore them was deceived about his own identity. Jon knew, Robb said quietly. My father's letter says he told Jon the truth before he went to King's Landing. Jon chose the Night's Watch anyway, chose to give up any claim. He doesn't want power. He never did. The Blackfish stood again. Be that as it may, we have a more immediate problem. Your father sent this letter for a reason. What else does it say? Robb looked down at the letter. He writes about the succession, about what should happen if Robert dies without legitimate issue, he says. Robb's voice caught. He says that if Jon's parentage is proven, if his legitimacy as Rhaegar's son is established, Jon has the strongest claim to the Iron Throne. Stronger than Stannis. Stronger than Renly. Stronger than anyone. Because Rhaegar was crown prince, the Blackfish said slowly, understanding dawning on his weathered face. The line of succession passes through the eldest son before going to younger brothers. If Jon is Rhaegar's legitimate son, he comes before Robert's brothers. That's insane, Lord Bracken said. You're talking about crowning a Targaryen. Putting a dragon back on the throne, after everything Robert's rebellion accomplished? Robert's rebellion was built on a lie, Robb said. His voice was gaining strength now. Conviction. Everyone believed Rhaegar kidnapped and raped Lyanna, that he dishonored House Stark. But it wasn't true. She went willingly, married him willingly. The war that killed my grandfather and uncle and tens of thousands of others. It was all based on a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Lord Karstark's face was red with fury. My sons died fighting Lannisters. Your grandfather was burned alive by the Mad King. Your uncle strangled himself trying to save him. And you call that a misunderstanding? The Mad King's crimes are real, Robb said. I'm not denying that. Aegon Targaryen was a monster. But Rhaegar wasn't his father. Everyone who knew him said Rhaegar was different, honorable, wise. My father trusted him enough to believe Lyanna loved him. Your father trusted him. The great Jon's voice was dangerous now. Ned Stark never spoke of Rhaegar. Never. In all the years I've known him, he never once defended the Dragon Prince. Why should we believe this letter is genuine? Catelyn had been thinking the same thing. Robb, how do you know this letter is truly from your father? How do you know it's not a Lannister trick? Or some other deception? Robb held up the letter so she could see it. Because he signed it with the words he used to say to me when I was a child. Words no one else would know. The pack survives. That was his lesson. That was what he taught us. That Starks stand together, no matter what. This is his hand. His seal. His truth. He looked around the hall at the assembled lords. My father kept this secret for 14 years. Let everyone believe he'd dishonored his marriage. Let his own wife hate him for it. He did all of that to protect Jon, to keep his promise to Lyanna. And now he's dead, executed by the Lannisters. And his final act was to send this letter, to tell us the truth, to let us decide what to do with it. What to do with it? Ser Mark Piper laughed bitterly. What can we do with it? Jon Snow is at the wall. The Lannisters control King's Landing. And we're sitting here debating whether to crown you king in the north or support one of Robert's brothers. This letter doesn't change any of that. It changes everything, Robb said quietly. Because if Jon is Rhaegar's legitimate son, if he has the rightful claim to the Iron Throne, then we're not rebels fighting a usurper. We're loyalists supporting the true king. The hall exploded again. Half the lords shouting in anger, the other half shouting in confusion. The great Jon was on his feet, his massive frame intimidating. Lord Karstark was screaming about Targaryen crimes. Mage Mormont was demanding to see the letter herself, and through it all, Catelyn watched her son, watched Robb Stark, barely 15, thrust into command by necessity, weighed down by responsibilities he'd never wanted, stand before his bannermen and defend a boy he'd grown up with. A boy Catelyn had treated with coldness and cruelty for 14 years. Jon Snow, Catelyn thought. No, Jon Targaryen, Rhaegar's son, Lyanna's son, and the biggest threat to my children's future imaginable. Because if Jon had a claim to the Iron Throne, if lords started rallying to him, then Robb would never be safe. Sansa would never be safe. None of her children would be safe. The Targaryens had supporters still, loyalists who had never accepted Robert's rule. If they found a prince to rally behind, but she also understood what Ned had done, understood the impossible choice he'd made, to break his honor, to keep a promise, to let the world think him an oath-breaker, to protect his sister's son. Oh, Ned, Catelyn thought, what have you done to us? The Blackfish raised his voice above the chaos. Quiet, all of you, quiet. When the hall finally settled, he turned to Robb. Are there other letters? What else did Lord Eddard send? Robb sorted through the case. Letters to the High Lords, to Lord Stannis, to... He stopped, pulled out another sealed letter. To Jon. A letter addressed to Jon Snow at Castle Black. You should read it, Catelyn said. If it pertains to this matter, we need to know what it says. It's addressed to Jon, Robb said. I can't just... Your father is dead, the great Jon said bluntly. Jon is at the wall, and we're deciding matters that affect the whole realm. Read the damn letter, boy. Robb hesitated, then broke the seal. Read silently. His expression shifted through a dozen emotions. Grief, love, pain, understanding. When he finally looked up, tears ran down his face. My father is releasing Jon from his bastard status, Robb said softly. This letter is a formal legitimization. It names Jon as Jon Stark, acknowledges him as Lyanna's true-born son, and... His voice broke. And it names him heir to Winterfell if I should die without issue. The hall erupted for the third time. But this time, Catelyn didn't hear the shouting, didn't hear the arguments. She was staring at her son, at the grief and love written on his young face, and understanding what this meant. Ned had chosen Jon over Robb, over her children, had written a letter that would make Jon heir to the North, legitimate in his own right, with a claim not just to Winterfell but to the Iron Throne itself. And he never told me, Catelyn thought. Never trusted me with this, because he knew I would fight it, knew I would protect my own children over his sister's son. She wanted to be angry, wanted to rage at Ned for this betrayal. But he was dead, executed in King's Landing. And his last act had been to try to set things right, to acknowledge the truth he'd hidden for so long. "This is treason," Lord Karstark said into the chaos. "You're talking about supporting a Targaryen claim, about putting a dragon prince's son on the throne, after the Mad King burned your grandfather alive, after Rhaegar started the war that killed tens of thousands. You would dishonor their memories by—" "Enough!" Robb's voice cracked like a whip. He stood, and suddenly he looked every inch a lord, every inch a king. "My grandfather and uncle died because of Aerys Targaryen's madness, not Rhaegar's, not Jon's. And my father, the most honorable man any of us ever knew, trusted Jon enough to hide him, protect him, legitimize him. If that's not enough for you, Lord Karstark, then say so now and leave this hall." Karstark's face went white, then red. But he sat down without another word. Robb looked around the room. "I know what you're all thinking. I know the crimes the Targaryens committed. I know the pain they caused. But I also know Jon Snow. I grew up with him, trained with him, loved him as a brother. And I'm telling you, he's not his grandfather. He's not even his father. He's a Stark, Lyanna's son, northern blood through and through, with dragon blood mixed in," Mage Mormont repeated. "You can't ignore that, Lord Robb. You can't pretend the Targaryen half doesn't exist." "I'm not pretending anything," Robb said. "I'm acknowledging all of it. Jon is Stark and Targaryen both, ice and fire. And my father believed strongly enough to risk everything, that Jon deserved protection, deserved truth, deserved legitimacy." He held up the letter. "This is my father's final command, his last will. He wants Jon acknowledged, legitimized, named heir if I die. And more than that," Robb's voice strengthened. "He wants us to consider Jon's claim to the Iron Throne, to consider that Robert's rebellion might have been built on false premises, that the rightful king might not be Stannis, or Renly, or Joffrey. It might be Jon." "You're mad," Lord Bracken said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Even if all of this is true, Jon took the black. He's a brother of the Night's Watch. He can't leave, can't claim anything. The vows say service ends at death," the Blackfish interrupted. Everyone turned to look at him. "I'm not saying I support this madness, but technically, if a king pardoned Jon from his vows, released him from service, there's precedent. When Maester Aemon was offered the crown at the Great Council of 233, some lords proposed releasing him from his vows. He refused. But the legal framework exists. "You're talking about overriding the Night's Watch's authority," Sir Mark Piper said. "That's never been done. The Watch is independent, autonomous. No king has the right to— A king has whatever rights he can enforce," the great Jon said. His voice was thoughtful now, considering, if enough lords supported Jon's claim, if enough of the realm acknowledged him as the rightful heir, he could be released from his vows by royal decree. The Watch wouldn't like it, might even fight it. But it could be done. Catelyn found her voice. "This is all theoretical. Jon is at Castle Black. We're at River Run. The Lannisters control the south. Stannis and Renly are both claiming the throne. Even if we wanted to support Jon's claim, how would we do it? How would we get him from the wall to King's Landing with an army at his back?" "We start by acknowledging the truth," Robb said. He looked directly at his mother. "We stop pretending Jon is a bastard. We acknowledge him as Lyanna's son, as my cousin, as a Stark with a legitimate claim to Winterfell and, if the proof of his parents' marriage can be found, to the Iron Throne." "And then what?" Catelyn demanded. "You expect the Northern Lords to follow a Targaryen? After everything that family did to us, I expect them to follow Jon," Robb said quietly. "Because he's not just a Targaryen. He's one of us. He's Pack." The word hung in the air. Pack. The core of Stark identity, the fundamental truth Ned had taught them all. The Pack survives. Lord Rhaegar Karstark stood slowly, His face was lined with grief and fury. "I lost 2 sons at the Whispering Wood. They died fighting for House Stark, for the North, for Lord Eddard and his children, and now you tell me their deaths were in service of protecting a Targaryen pretender?" "They died fighting Lannisters," Robb said. "Fighting the people who murdered my father. Who murdered Jon Arryn? Who would have murdered all of us if they could? That doesn't change because of Jon's parentage," Karstark roared. "You're asking us to consider crowning the grandson of the Mad King, the son of the man who stole Lyanna Stark. Do you have any idea what that means? What it would do to the North?" "I know exactly what it means," Robb said. His voice was steel now. "It means choosing between the easy path and the right path, between hiding the truth and facing it. My father spent 14 years hiding the secret, living with dishonor, letting people think he'd broken his wedding vows. And he did it because he believed Jon deserved protection, deserved life, deserved the chance to prove himself." He looked around the hall. "Jon has proven himself. He's served at the wall, taken vows that renounce all claims to land and title. He's not seeking power. He's not plotting to steal the throne. He's doing his duty the way a Stark always does. And my father's final wish was that we acknowledge who he really is, that we stop forcing him to live a lie." "Noble words," Mage Mormont said. "But words don't change facts. Jon is Rhaegar's son. Half the realm will never accept him. Half the North won't accept him. You're talking about civil war, fracturing everything we've built." "We're already in a civil war," the Blackfish pointed out. "The Lannisters murdered Robert, murdered Ned. Stannis and Renly are both claiming the throne. The realm is tearing itself apart. Jon's claim doesn't make things worse. It just adds another name to the list of contenders, a name with the best legal claim," Robb said. "If Jon is Rhaegar's legitimate son, and my father believed he was, then he comes before Stannis and Renly in the succession. He's the rightful heir. The rightful heir is whoever can hold the throne," the Great Jon said. "That's the only law that matters. Robert took the throne by conquest. Whoever wins this war will do the same. Jon's claim only matters if he has the strength to enforce it. Then we give him that strength," Robb said. The hall went silent. Everyone staring at Robb, at the young lord, barely more than a boy, who had just proposed supporting a Targaryen claim to the Iron Throne. Catelyn's heart hammered in her chest. She knew what Robb was about to say, knew what he was thinking, and she wanted to scream at him to stop, to think about his own future, his own claim, his own children someday. But she also knew her son, knew his honor, his love for Jon, his absolute certainty that doing the right thing mattered more than doing the easy thing. He was Ned's son in every way that mattered. "Lord Robb," Catelyn said carefully, "think about what you're saying. Think about what you're proposing. You're talking about giving up your own claim, your own future, everything your father built." "My father built a lie," Robb said, "not cruelly, just factually. He hid Jon's truth to protect him. I understand why. But the lie is over now. The truth is out, and I have to decide. Do I cling to a crown I never wanted, or do I do what's right? What's honorable? What my father would want." "Your father would want you to survive," Catelyn said, "to protect your family. To keep his promises," Robb interrupted gently. "That's what father would want. He promised Lyanna he'd protect Jon. He kept that promise for 14 years. And his final act was to legitimize Jon, to acknowledge the truth. I can't dishonor that. I won't." He turned to face the assembled lords. "I am Lord of Winterfell, Ned Stark's son and heir, and I'm telling you that Jon Snow, Jon Stark, Jon Targaryen, whatever name he carries, is my cousin, my blood, my pack. And if my father believed he deserved recognition, then I believe it too." The Great Jon stood. His massive frame dominated the room. "You're saying you'd support Jon's claim over your own?" "I never wanted to be king," Robb said quietly. "The crown you're planning to offer me, I'll take it if I must, if the North needs it. But if there's a better option, a truer option, someone with a stronger claim and the right to rule, then yes, I would support Jon over myself." Lord Karstark looked like he'd been struck. "You would kneel to a Targaryen." "I would kneel to my family," Robb said. "To someone I trust, someone I know, someone who has proven himself honorable and brave and selfless, yes. If Jon had the throne, If he could unite the realm and end this war, I would kneel to him gladly. Catelyn closed her eyes. Oh, Robb, you noble, foolish boy, you have no idea what you've just done. Because the northern lords were not looking at Robb with admiration. They were looking at him with shock, with betrayal, with fury. The great Jon's face had gone dark. You would kneel. But would the North? That's what we're here to decide, Robb said. That's what this council is for. I've told you my father's wishes. I've told you my own feelings. Now you need to decide. Each of you. What do you believe? What will you support? Lord Rhaegar Karstark stood. I will not kneel to a Targaryen. Not while I live. Not while I remember my son's deaths. Not while I remember what Aerys did to your grandfather and uncle. You can dress this up with pretty words about marriage and love and legitimacy. But the truth is simple. Rhaegar Targaryen's blood is poison. Anyone who carries it is a threat to the North. And I will not follow such a man. Ever. He turned and walked toward the door, stopped, looked back at Robb. I followed your father because he was honorable. I followed you because you're his son. But if you kneel to a dragon, you lose me. You lose my house. And you'll lose the North. Mark my words, Lord Robb. This path leads to ruin. He left. The door closed behind him with a heavy thud. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, Lady Mage Mormont stood. I agree with Lord Karstark. I won't follow a Targaryen. I don't care if he's half Stark. I don't care if Lyanna loved him. The North remembers what the dragons did to us. We remember the Mad King. We remember the burning. And we will not kneel to that family again. She didn't leave. But her message was clear. If Robb supported Jon's claim, he would lose House Mormont's support. One by one, the northern lords showed their positions, some through words, some through silence. But the division was clear. The great Jon remained seated, his expression unreadable. Galbart Glover said nothing, but his face showed doubt. The river lords were quieter. This was northern business, northern history. But even they looked uncomfortable with talk of supporting a Targaryen. Robb stood alone at the front of the hall, his father's letters in his hand, and watched his support crumble. Catelyn wanted to go to him, wanted to embrace him and tell him she understood. But she also wanted to shake him, to demand he stop this madness before it destroyed everything. Ned, she thought desperately. Ned, what have you done? You've torn the North apart, torn your own son apart, all for a promise to a dead sister, all for a boy who might destroy everything you built. The Blackfish stood. My lords, this is clearly not a decision to be made tonight. Tempers are high. Grief is fresh. We need time to think, to consider, to plot, the great Jon interrupted. To scheme, to decide whether we follow Lord Robb or abandon him. He looked at Robb. You've put us in an impossible position, boy. You've asked us to choose between you and our hatred of the Targaryens. That's not a choice most of us can make lightly. I understand, Robb said, but I had to tell you. Had to honor my father's wishes. Had to give you the truth so you could make informed decisions. The truth, Lord Bracken said bitterly, is that we just won 2 great victories. We have the Kingslayer in chains. We have the Lannisters on the run. And now, instead of pressing our advantage, we're tearing ourselves apart over a bastard boy at the wall who might or might not be a Targaryen prince. Jon is at the wall, Robb agreed. But he won't stay there forever. Not if we release him from his vows. Not if we offer him his birthright. And if he refuses? Mage Mormont asked. If he chooses to honor his Night's Watch vows? What then? Robb had no answer, because that was the question none of them could answer. What did Jon want? What would Jon choose if given the option? The boy Robb remembered. His closest companion, his brother in all but name, would never seek power, would never want a crown. Jon had always lived in Robb's shadow, content to let others lead while he followed. But Jon had also tried to desert the Night's Watch to help Robb, had been willing to break his vows, risk execution, abandon everything for family. If Robb asked Jon to come south, to claim his birthright, to take the throne that was rightfully his, would Jon say yes? Or would he refuse, choosing duty over family the way Ned had taught them? Robb didn't know, and that uncertainty terrified him more than the Lannisters, more than the war, more than anything. We need to send a raven to Castle Black, Robb said. We need to tell Jon what we've learned. What father wanted. We need to give him the choice. And if he chooses wrong, the great Jon asked, If he refuses his claim, then we respect his decision, Robb said. But we still acknowledge the truth. We still honor father's wishes. Jon is a Stark, Lyanna's son. That doesn't change whether he claims the throne or stays at the wall. Catelyn finally stood. My lords, my son speaks from grief and love. That's admirable. But we need to be practical. The Lannisters have Sansa. They have Arya, we think, though we're not certain. They control King's Landing. They have armies. And we're sitting here debating whether to support a boy at the wall who has taken vows renouncing all claims. She looked at Robb. I loved your father. I trusted him. But this letter, this revelation, it complicates everything. We need to think about what serves the North best, what protects our people, what gives us the best chance of winning this war and rescuing your sisters. Mother's right, Edmure Tully said. This is bigger than Jon Snow, bigger than Targaryen claims. We need to focus on the immediate threats, the Lannisters, Joffrey, the war we're actually fighting. The war we're fighting is about legitimacy, Robb said, about who has the right to rule. Joffrey is a bastard born of incest. Stannis and Renly are fighting each other. The realm is tearing itself apart because no one knows who the rightful king is. Jon's claim matters because it could end the war. Could unite the realm behind a legitimate heir with both Targaryen and Stark blood. Or it could make the war worse, the Blackfish said. Could split the North, turn allies into enemies. Create a three-way or four-way conflict instead of the two-way war we already have. Robb looked around the hall, saw the doubt, the fear, the anger, and understood with sinking certainty that his father's revelation had not solved anything. It had only made everything more complicated. This council is ended, Robb said quietly. We'll meet again tomorrow. Think about what you've learned. Pray to whatever gods you follow. And tomorrow we'll decide what to do next. But for tonight, his voice hardened. No one speaks of this outside this room. No one. Jon's secret stays here until we decide how to handle it. Understood? Murmurs of agreement. But Catelyn could see it in their eyes. The secret was too big to keep, too explosive. Within days, everyone in the camp would know. Within weeks, the whole North would know. Jon Snow was a Targaryen, Rhaegar's son, a prince with a claim to the Iron Throne, and the North was about to tear itself apart over what to do about it. The lords filed out slowly, some stopping to speak with Robb, others leaving quickly, their faces troubled. The great Jon lingered longest, standing before Robb with an expression Catelyn couldn't read. Your father was a good man, the great Jon said finally. The best man I've known. If he believed Jon deserved this, believed it strongly enough to write it in his final letters, then there must be truth in it. But, Robb prompted, but the North has a long memory, boy. We remember what the Targaryens did. And asking us to kneel to one again, even one with Stark blood, that's asking for more than most men can give. He gripped Robb's shoulder. Sleep on this. Don't make any rash decisions. And whatever you do, don't let your love for Jon Snow cloud your judgment about what's best for the North. He left. And finally, only Catelyn and Robb remained in the great hall, surrounded by empty chairs and the weight of impossible choices. Robb sank into his seat. He looked exhausted, defeated, younger than his years instead of older. I don't know what to do, Mother, he said quietly. Father left me this burden and I don't know how to carry it. Catelyn moved to him, sat beside him, took his hand the way she'd done when he was small and frightened of thunder. Your father loved you, Catelyn said. More than anything, he would never want to hurt you. But he also loved Jon, loved his sister, and he was trying to do right by everyone. That's an impossible task, Robb. You can't make everyone happy. Can't honor every promise. Sometimes you have to choose. Choose what? Robb asked. Choose between Jon and the North? Between father's wishes and political reality? How do I make that choice? You think about what you want, Catelyn said. Not what your father wanted. Not what Jon wants. What do you want, Robb? What kind of future can you live with? Robb was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I want Jon back. I want my brother beside me. I want the North whole and strong. I want my sisters safe. I want father alive. He laughed bitterly. I want things I can't have. Then choose from the things you can have, Catelyn said. You can claim the North. You can fight the Lannisters. You can work to free your sisters. Those are achievable goals. Jon's claim to the Iron Throne, Robb, That's a dream. A possibility, not a certainty. But if it's true, Robb started. Truth and power are different things, Catelyn said firmly. Jon might have the truest claim in the realm, but without an army, without support, without dragons, his claim is just words. You have an army. You have support. You have victories. Don't throw that away chasing your father's dream. Robb looked at her. You never liked Jon. No, Catelyn admitted. I didn't, and I'm ashamed of that now, knowing the truth. But my feelings about Jon don't change the political reality. Supporting his claim weakens yours, divides the North, makes this war harder to win. So I should just ignore father's letters? Pretend I never learned the truth. I'm saying you should think carefully before making decisions that can't be undone, Catelyn said. Your father kept this secret for 14 years. You don't have to solve it in one night. Robb nodded slowly, but Catelyn could see it in his eyes. He had already made his choice, already decided. He was going to support Jon, consequences be damned, because that was what his honor demanded. He was Ned's son in every way, including the ways that would destroy him. Gods help us all, Catelyn thought. Gods help us all. The North fractures the next morning dawned gray and cold over River Run. Robb stood in his chambers, staring at his father's letters spread across the table. He had read them a dozen times through the night, read every word, studied every line, looking for guidance, looking for certainty, looking for some answer that would make this easier. He found none. A knock at the door. Enter, Robb called. The Blackfish came in, his weathered face grave. The lords are gathering. They expect you to call another council. I know, Robb said. Uncle Brynden, I need your counsel. You fought in wars, served lords and kings. What would you do? If you were me, the Blackfish moved to the window, looking out over River Run's walls. Your father once told me that the hardest part of command isn't making the right choice. It's living with the consequences of any choice. He said every decision costs something. Every path has a price. That's not an answer, Robb said. It's the only answer I have, Brynden replied. He turned to face Robb. You're asking me whether you should support Jon's claim, whether you should honor your father's wishes or protect your own position. I can't tell you that. Only you can. Everyone keeps saying that, Robb said with frustration. But I'm 15 years old. I've been Lord of Winterfell for a few months. I've commanded armies for weeks. How am I supposed to know what's right? You do what your father did, Brynden said. You follow your honor. You keep your promises. You protect your pack. That's all any Stark can do. My father's honor got him killed, Robb said bitterly. Yes, Brynden agreed. It did. But he died knowing he'd kept his word, knowing he'd protected Jon for 14 years, knowing he'd done everything he could to serve the realm and his family. That's worth something, Robb. That means something. Does it? Robb asked. Does it mean something when your family is torn apart? When your allies abandon you? When everything you've built collapses because you told the truth? Sometimes, yes, Brynden said quietly. Sometimes honor costs everything, and you pay the price anyway because you're a Stark, because that's what Starks do. A second knock. This time it was Theon Greyjoy, Robb's closest companion, or who Robb had thought was his closest companion before remembering Jon. The lords are getting restless, Theon said. Karstark's talking to anyone who'll listen, saying you've betrayed the North, that you're a Targaryen sympathizer. It's getting ugly out there. Let them talk, Robb said. I'm not hiding. I'm not running from this. Maybe you should consider it, Theon said. He looked uncomfortable. Robb, I know Jon's your brother, your cousin, whatever. But Lord Karstark's right about one thing. The North won't follow a Targaryen. They can barely stomach the idea. If you push this, you'll lose everything. Then I lose everything, Robb said. But I won't lie about Jon. Won't pretend my father's letters don't exist. Won't dishonor his memory by ignoring his final wishes. Your father's dead, Theon said bluntly. You're alive. You have responsibilities to the living, Robb, to your bannermen, to your family, to the North. Don't throw that away for a boy at the wall who might not even want what you're offering. Robb wanted to argue, wanted to defend Jon. But Theon's words struck home because they echoed his mother's, echoed the doubt that had kept him awake all night. What if Jon didn't want this? What if Robb tore the North apart, supporting a claim Jon would refuse? I need to speak with him, Robb said. Need to know what Jon wants before I make any decisions. Uncle Brynden, can we send a rider to Castle Black? Someone fast who can carry my letter and bring back Jon's response? It's 800 miles, Brynden said. Even a fast rider will take 3 weeks there and 3 weeks back. 6 weeks minimum before you'd have an answer. Can this wait that long? It has to, Robb said. I won't make decisions about Jon's future without knowing what Jon wants. The lords won't wait 6 weeks, Theon warned. They'll demand answers now. Demand you make a choice. Then they'll be disappointed, Robb said. Because I'm not deciding Jon's future without Jon. He gathered the letters, placed them back in their case, and sealed it. Call the council. Let's see what they have to say. The great hall was more crowded than the previous night. Word had spread despite Robb's orders for secrecy. Not the full story, just rumors, whispers, speculation, but enough that every lord and knight in Riverrun wanted to be present for whatever announcement came next. Robb entered with the Blackfish at his side, Theon following. Grey Wind padded beside him, the direwolf's presence comforting. Catelyn sat in the seat reserved for the Lord of Riverrun's lady, her face carefully neutral. The Great Jon sat close to the high seat, his massive frame dominating the space. Lord Karstark sat on the opposite side, his expression thunderous. Lady Mage Mormont stood near the back with her arms crossed. Galbart Glover sat beside her, his face troubled. The River Lords filled the other seats, Sir Edmure in his position as Lord of Riverrun. The Blackfish taking his place as the Tully's military commander. Jonos Bracken and Tydos Blackwood sitting as far apart as the seating allowed. Ancient rivals, united only by the war. Jason Mallister, Mark Piper, Carol Vance, the remains of Sir Stavron Frey's delegation. Robb stood, and the hall quieted, all eyes fixed on him. My lords, Robb began. Last night I shared news from my father, news about Jon Snow's true parentage. I understand this has created discussion. Discussion? Lord Karstark stood, his voice dripped with contempt. You told us that Ned Stark lied for 14 years, that the boy we thought was his bastard is actually a Targaryen whelp. And you expect us to treat this as discussion? I expect you to treat it as truth. Robb said firmly, my father's letters are genuine. I've verified his seal, his hand, his signature. Jon is Lyanna Stark's son. That's not speculation. That's fact. Fact that changes nothing, Mage Mormont said. Jon took the black. He's a brother of the Night's Watch. His vows renounce all claims. Whether he's a Stark or a Targaryen or the second coming of Aegon the Conqueror, he can't inherit anything, can't claim anything. He's dead to the realm, unless a king releases him from those vows, Robb said. What king? Karstark demanded. You're not a king, boy. You're Lord of Winterfell, and you're only that because your father was murdered by the Lannisters. Don't let your grief and your love for your bastard brother make you forget your place. Grey Wind growled, a low rumble that made several lords step back. Robb placed his hand on the direwolf's head, calming him. I know my place, Lord Karstark, Robb said. His voice was cold. I'm Eddard Stark's son and heir, Lord of Winterfell, Warden of the North, and I'm the commander of the army that destroyed Jaime Lannister's forces and captured the Kingslayer himself. My place is at the head of this host, leading the North, defending our people. Don't you forget that. Karstark's face went red. But he sat down without responding. The Great Jon stood. His voice filled the hall. The boy's right about one thing. He's our commander. We followed him south because of what the Lannisters did to his father. We've won victories under his leadership. But now he's asking us to consider something that goes against everything the North stands for. Everything we've fought for. He looked at Robb. You said last night you'd support Jon's claim. That you'd kneel to him if he had the throne. I need to know. Are you still saying that? Are you asking us to follow you in kneeling to a Targaryen? Every person in the hall held their breath. This was the moment. The question everything hinged on. Robb looked around the room, saw the anger in Karstark's eyes, the calculation in Mage Mormont's expression, the concern on his mother's face, the doubt everywhere. And he thought of Jon, of the boy, the man now, who had been his closest companion, who he'd loved as a brother, who had tried to desert the Night's Watch to help him despite knowing it meant death. I lived in Robb's shadow. Jon had confessed to Stannis Baratheon, according to the reports from the Wall. He was better than me at everything. But I couldn't hate him because we loved each other as brothers. Jon had never wanted power, never sought glory, had chosen the Night's Watch specifically to remove himself from succession, to make sure he could never threaten Robb's children. And Robb was supposed to repay that loyalty by staying silent? By pretending his father's letters didn't exist? By letting Jon remain a bastard when he had the power to legitimize him? I meant what I said last night, Robb answered. If Jon has the rightful claim to the Iron Throne, if my father's evidence proves he's Rhaegar's legitimate son, then yes, I would support him, would kneel to him, would fight for him. The hall erupted. Shouts of anger, accusations of treason, demands that Robb reconsider. Silence. The Blackfish's voice cut through the chaos. Let him finish. Robb waited for quiet, then continued. But I'm not asking any of you to make that choice today. I'm not demanding you kneel to Jon. I'm not even certain Jon would accept the throne if it was offered. He took vows. Vows he takes seriously. I need to speak with him first. Need to know what he wants before any of us make decisions about his future. And how do you propose to do that? Galbart Glover asked. Castle Black is weeks away. We're in the middle of a war. The Lannisters have lost Jaime, Robb interrupted. They've lost half their army. They're reeling. We have time. Not much, but enough to send a letter to Jon. To tell him what we've learned. To ask him what he wants. And if he wants the throne? Magie Mormont asked. If he accepts your offer to release him from his vows and claim his birthright? What then? Then we decide, Robb said. Each of us. Each house. Do you support Jon's claim or not? Do you believe in his right to rule or not? I can't make that choice for you. I can only make it for myself. You've already made it, Stark said. You've chosen the dragon over the north. Chosen a Targaryen pretender over your own bannerman. That's treason, boy. Treason against everything your father stood for. My father stood for keeping his word. Robb shot back. For protecting family. For doing what was right even when it cost everything. That's what I'm doing. That's what being a Stark means. Being a Stark means ruling the North. Stark roared. Means putting northern interests first. Not throwing away our independence for a boy with dragon blood. Jon has Stark blood too, Robb said. Lyanna's blood. My father's sister. That makes him as much a Stark as a Targaryen. Blood doesn't change facts, Magie Mormont said. The Mad King burned your grandfather alive. Rhaegar started the war that killed tens of thousands. That's Targaryen legacy. That's what Jon inherits along with his claim. Jon inherits his mother's legacy too, Robb countered. Lyanna was brave, strong, honorable. She loved her family, fought for what she believed in. That's what Jon learned from being raised by my father. That's who he is. You're seeing what you want to see, the Blackfish said quietly. You're seeing your brother, the boy you grew up with. But the rest of the realm will see a Targaryen, will remember the Mad King, will fear what Jon might become. Then they're fools, Robb said. Jon is nothing like Aerys, nothing like the Mad King. He's a boy you haven't seen in months, Catelyn interrupted. A boy who might have changed, who might want things you don't expect. Robb, you're making decisions based on who Jon was, not who he is now. He's still Jon, Robb said with certainty. Still the person I know. Still honorable and good and worthy of trust. You can't know that, Catelyn said. People change. Power changes people. The knowledge that he has a claim to the Iron Throne might change Jon in ways you can't predict. Robb wanted to argue, wanted to insist that Jon would never change. But a small voice in his head, the part that sounded like his father, whispered doubt. You haven't seen him since Winterfell. Haven't spoken with him. Don't know what the wall has done to him, what learning his true parentage might have done. That's why I need to write to him, Robb said. Need to hear from Jon himself before making any more decisions. I'm asking for time, just enough time to contact Castle Black and get a response. 6 weeks, the great Jon said. That's how long it'll take. 6 weeks while we sit here arguing about a boy who might not even want what you're offering. 6 weeks while the Lannisters regroup. 6 weeks while Stannis and Renly fight over who gets to be king. That's time we can't afford to waste. Then what do you suggest? Robb asked. That I ignore my father's letters? Pretend I never learned the truth? I suggest you focus on the war we're actually fighting, the great Jon said. Joffrey Baratheon, or whatever his name really is, controls King's Landing. He murdered your father. He holds your sisters. That's what matters. not some theoretical claim by a boy at the wall. It's not theoretical if it's true, Robb said. If Jon is Rhaegar's legitimate son, he has the strongest legal claim to the throne. Stronger than Joffrey? Stronger than Stannis or Renly? That matters in a war. That changes the political landscape. Only if people believe it, Tytos Blackwood said. The Lord of Raventree Hall was a northern-style old god's follower, one of the few river lords who might understand Stark thinking. Only if you can prove Rhaegar and Lyanna were married, that Jon is legitimate. Without proof, it's just another claim, another pretender. My father's letter is proof, Robb said. Your father's letter is evidence, Blackwood corrected. But it's not the kind of proof that wins wars. You need witnesses, documents, maesters willing to verify the marriage. Without that, Jon's claim is just words. Robb felt the weight of that truth. His father had written that Rhaegar and Lyanna married before a heart tree, that the marriage was witnessed by Rhaegar's friends, Arthur Dayne, Oswell Went, Geralt Hightower, all dead now, killed at the Tower of Joy. The only living witness was Howland Reed, Lord of Greywater Watch, the man who had been with Ned at the Tower of Joy, who had helped him fight the Kingsguard. Who knew the truth? I need to send for Howland Reed, Robb said. He was there. He knows what happened. If anyone can verify my father's story, it's him. Greywater Watch moves, Magie Mormont said. The Crannog men don't stay in one place. It could take weeks to find Lord Reed, weeks more to bring him here. You're talking about months of delay while the war continues. Then I'll send multiple riders, Robb said. Blanket the neck with searchers. Find Lord Reed and bring him here to testify. And if his testimony contradicts your father's letter? Caitlin asked quietly. If Reed says there was no marriage? That Jon is a bastard after all? What then? Robb hesitated. That possibility hadn't occurred to him. His father's letters were so certain, so detailed. But what if Ned had been wrong? What if Lyanna had lied to him? What if the marriage wasn't legal or wasn't real? Then we deal with that truth, Robb said finally. But until we know for certain, I won't condemn Jon based on assumptions. Lord Karstark stood again. I've heard enough. Lord Robb, you're a brave commander. You've won victories I didn't think possible. But in this, you're wrong. You're letting your love for Jon Snow cloud your judgment. And I won't be party to it. He looked around the hall. Any man who follows me is welcome. House Karstark is withdrawing from this host. We'll return to our lands. Defend the north from there, but we won't fight to put a Targaryen on the throne. We won't kneel to dragon's blood. Not now, not ever. He turned and walked toward the door. Several of his men followed. Robb watched them go, his heart sinking. Lord Karstark, Robb called. If you leave now, you're abandoning the war. Abandoning justice for my father. For your sons who died at the Whispering Wood. Karstark stopped. Turned. My sons died fighting Lannisters. I'll continue that fight from the north. But I won't fight for a Targaryen pretender. That's where I draw the line. Jon isn't. Robb started. Jon is whatever his blood makes him, Karstark interrupted. And his blood is half dragon. That's enough for me. Good luck, Lord Robb. I hope you survive what's coming, but you'll survive it without House Karstark's support. He left. The door closed behind him with finality. Robb looked around the hall, saw uncertainty in every face, saw lords calculating whether to follow Karstark's example, saw his support crumbling in real time. Anyone else want to leave? Robb asked. His voice was steady, despite the fear in his chest. Anyone else want to abandon the fight because of who Jon's father was? No one moved, but no one pledged renewed loyalty either. They simply sat in uncomfortable silence. Lady Maige Mormont finally spoke. I'm not leaving. House Mormont stands with House Stark. But Lord Robb, you need to understand something. The North will follow you. We'll fight for you. We'll die for you. But we won't follow a Targaryen. Won't kneel to dragon's blood. If you force us to choose between you and that principle, you'll tear the North apart. I'm not forcing anyone to choose anything, Robb said. I'm asking for time, for information, for a chance to speak with Jon before making irreversible decisions. Time is what we don't have, the great Jon said. Every day we delay is a day the Lannisters use to regroup. Every day we argue about Jon is a day Joffrey gets stronger. We need to make decisions now, boy. Not weeks from now. Then make your decisions, Robb said. But I'm making mine. I'm writing to Jon. I'm sending for Howland Reed. I'm gathering evidence about Jon's parentage and his legitimacy. And when I have all the facts, when I know what Jon wants and what the truth actually is, then I'll decide what to do next. And until then, Galbart Glover asked. Until then, we continue the war, Robb said. We fight the Lannisters. We work to free my sisters. We defend the North and the Riverlands. That hasn't changed. The only question is what happens after we win. If we win, Mage Mormont muttered. When we win, Robb corrected firmly. We've already proven we can beat the Lannisters. We captured Jaime, broke their siege, won every battle we've fought. That doesn't change because of Jon's parentage. We're still the same army, still have the same advantages, still have the same goal, justice for my father and freedom for the North. The great Jon studied Robb for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, I'll stay. House Umber stands with House Stark, but Lord Robb, this business with Jon? It ends after we win the war. No more talk of Targaryen claims. No more letters to the wall. We fight this war as Northmen fighting for northern interests. Understood? It wasn't a question. It was an ultimatum. Robb wanted to refuse, wanted to insist he'd do what he thought right regardless of the Great Jon's conditions. But he also understood political reality. Without House Umber's support, the northern host would fracture completely. Other houses would follow Karstark's example. The war would be lost before it truly began. Understood, Robb said. No more talk of Jon's claim during the war. We focus on fighting the Lannisters. And after? Mage Mormont pressed. After we win? What then? After we win, we deal with whatever comes, Robb said. But that's a problem for tomorrow. Today we have battles to fight and enemies to kill. That should be enough to occupy us. The lords murmured agreement. The tension didn't disappear, but it eased slightly. They had an understanding. A temporary truce. Enough to keep the host together for now. But Catelyn could see the cracks, could see how fragile Robb's coalition had become. One more crisis, one more revelation, one more demand that they support Jon's claim, and everything would fall apart. Ned, she thought, you've left us an impossible situation. A truth that divides more than it unites. I hope you're satisfied. The council ended without formal conclusion. Lords filed out in small groups, talking quietly amongst themselves, making plans, calculating allegiances, deciding how much rope to give their young commander before pulling back. Robb remained at the high seat, Grey-Wind beside him, looking exhausted and defeated. Catelyn approached slowly. You handled that as well as could be expected. I lost Karstark, Robb said. Lost who knows how many other houses who'll quietly withdraw over the next few weeks. All because I told the truth about Jon. You did what you thought was right, Catelyn said. That's all anyone can do. Is it enough? Robb asked. Is doing what's right enough when it costs you everything? Catelyn had no answer, because she didn't know. Ned had done what he thought was right, protected Jon, kept his promise, served honorably, and it had gotten him killed. Had gotten House Stark torn apart, had started a war that might destroy them all. Maybe honor wasn't enough. Maybe sometimes you had to be practical. Ruthless, willing to sacrifice principle for survival. But she also knew her son, knew he was Ned's heir in spirit as much as blood, knew he would rather die honorably than live with dishonor. Just like his father, God save us from honorable men, Catelyn thought. They'll destroy the world trying to do the right thing. That night, Robb sat in his chambers and wrote 2 letters. The first was to Jon at Castle Black. Jon, I don't know how to begin this letter. Don't know how to tell you what I've learned without it sounding like madness. But you deserve the truth. You've always deserved the truth. Father left letters explaining everything. You're not his son, Jon. You're his nephew. Lyanna Stark's son. And Rhaegar Targaryen's. I know what you're thinking. That I've gone mad. That this is some cruel joke. But it's true. Father wrote it himself, explained how Lyanna and Rhaegar married in secret, how she died giving birth to you, how she made him promise to protect you from Robert's hatred. That's why Father claimed you as his bastard, why he let everyone think he'd dishonored Mother, why he kept the truth hidden for 14 years, to protect you, to keep his promise to his dying sister. But the truth is out now, and it changes everything. Jon, if what Father wrote is true, if you're Rhaegar's legitimate son, then you have a claim to the Iron Throne. a stronger claim than Stannis or Renly or anyone else. You're the crown prince's heir, the rightful king. I'm not saying you have to claim it. I know you took vows. Vows you take seriously, but you deserve to know the truth about who you are, about what you could be. Father legitimized you in his final letters, named you Jon Stark, made you his heir if I should die. He wanted you to have choices, to know your true parentage, to decide your own future. I need to know what you want, Jon. Do you want to stay at the wall? Honor your vows? Or do you want to claim your birthright? Take the throne that's rightfully yours. I'll support you either way. Whatever you decide, you're my brother, my cousin, my pack. That doesn't change, but I need to hear from you. Need to know what you're thinking, what you want. Because the North is tearing itself apart over this question, and I can't answer it without you. Write back soon. Please. Your brother. Robb. He sealed the letter and set it aside. Then began the second letter. This one to Howland Reed. Lord Howland, you were my father's closest friend, his companion at the Tower of Joy, one of the few people who knows the truth about what happened there. I need you to come to River Run. Need you to testify about what you saw, about Lyanna, about Rhaegar, about Jon. The North is fracturing over this question. Some houses demand proof before they'll accept Jon's legitimacy. Others refuse to accept it regardless of proof. You're the only living witness, the only person who can confirm or deny my father's account. Please, come south. Tell us what you know. Help us understand the truth. The pack needs you. Robb Stark, Lord of Winterfell, he sealed that letter as well. Called for his fastest riders, sent one north to Castle Black with the letter for Jon, sent 3 others into the Neck with orders to find Greywater Watch and bring Lord Reed south. Then he sat alone in his chambers, staring at his father's letters, and wondered if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. Outside his window, River Run prepared for war. Soldiers trained in the yards. Supplies were organized. Scouts departed to track Lannister movements. The war continued regardless of Jon's parentage, regardless of Targaryen claims, regardless of everything except the immediate need to survive. But Robb couldn't focus on tactics and strategy. Couldn't think about the next battle or the next move against the Lannisters. All he could think about was Jon, his brother, his cousin, his closest companion from childhood. What do you want, Jon? Robb wondered. What will you choose when you learn the truth? He had no idea. And that uncertainty terrified him more than any army, more than any enemy. Because everything, the war, the North's unity, his own future, depended on what Jon Snow decided. And Jon was 800 miles away at the wall, completely unaware that his entire world was about to change. Grey wind whined softly and pressed against Robb's leg. Robb buried his hand in the direwolf's fur, taking comfort from the contact. I hope I'm doing the right thing, Robb whispered to Grey Wind. I hope Father would be proud. I hope Jon understands. But hope wasn't certainty. And as Robb sat in the darkness, listening to River Run settle into uneasy sleep around him, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just set events in motion that no one could control. Events that would either save the North or destroy it completely. And all he could do was wait for Jon's answer and pray it was the right one. The choice that breaks everything. The Raven reached Castle Black on the 14th day after leaving River Run. Jon Snow was on the wall when it arrived, standing his watch in the cold wind that never stopped blowing. The wall stretched endlessly in both directions. 700 feet of ice, ancient and massive, built to keep out things the South had forgotten how to fear. He loved it here, loved the simplicity, the clarity. At Castle Black, Jon knew who he was, what he was. A brother of the Night's Watch, a crow. His vows were clear, his duties were defined. There was no ambiguity, no questions about his place in the world. He was bastard Jon Snow, and that was enough. Snow, Gren called up from below. Lord Commander wants you. Says there's a raven. From River Run, Jon's heart clenched. River Run, where Robb was, where the war was being fought. News from River Run could only mean one thing. Something had happened. Something important enough to warrant a letter to a brother of the Night's Watch who had renounced all claims to family ties. He descended the wall using the cage, his mind racing. When he reached the ground, Gren was waiting. What's happened? Jon asked. Is Robb all right? I don't know, Gren said. The old bear just said to fetch you. You should go. Now. Jon ran. Through Castle Black's courtyard. Past the practice yards where recruits trained. Into the Lord Commander's tower. Up the stairs to Jorah Mormont's chambers. The old bear sat at his desk. Robb's letter open before him. His raven, the talking raven that occasionally said corn, perched on his shoulder. Mormont's face was grave. Lord Commander, Jon said, breathing hard from the run. You sent for me? Sit, Snow, Mormont said. He gestured to a chair. We need to talk. Jon sat. His hands were shaking slightly. He clenched them into fists to stop the tremor. Mormont picked up the letter. This arrived from River Run, from your brother Robb. He's written to me as well as to you, asking me to release you from your vows. Jon felt the world tilt. What? He says there's been a revelation, Mormont continued. His weathered face was unreadable. About your parentage, about who you really are. Claims your father, Lord Eddard, left letters explaining that you're not his son, that you're his nephew, Lyanna Stark's son, by Rhaegar Targaryen. The words didn't make sense. Jon heard them, but couldn't process their meaning. That's impossible. My father wouldn't. He never said. According to this letter, he kept the secret to protect you, Mormont said. From anyone who would kill a Targaryen child. He claimed you as his bastard to keep you safe. No, Jon said. But even as he denied it, memories surfaced. His father's face when Jon had asked about his mother. The pain in Ned's eyes. The refusal to speak of her. You are a Stark, his father had said. You may not have my name, but you have my blood. Not his son. His nephew. Lyanna's son. Rhaegar Targaryen's son. I can't be, Jon whispered. I'm nobody, just a bastard. Just read your brother's letter, Mormont said gently. He handed it across the desk. Read what he has to say. Then we'll talk about what it means. Jon took the letter with trembling hands. Unfolded it. Began to read. With each line, his world shattered a little more. Robb's words were sincere, full of love and confusion and desperate hope. He explained what Ned's letters had revealed. Explained the marriage before the heart tree. Explained Lyanna's dying wish. Explained everything. And at the end, Robb asked, What do you want, Jon? Jon set down the letter, stared at his hands, tried to process what he'd just learned. He was a Targaryen, the grandson of the Mad King Aerys, the son of Crown Prince Rhaegar. If the marriage was legitimate, he wasn't a bastard at all. He was a prince, with a claim to the Iron Throne. This is madness, Jon said. It has to be. Some mistake, Your father's seal is genuine, Mormont said. I've seen Eddard Stark's seal enough times to recognize it. And the details? Jon, I knew your father, knew him for an honorable man. If he wrote this, if he legitimized you in his final letters, then I believe it's true. But it can't be true, Jon said desperately. I'm Jon Snow. I'm a bastard. I'm a brother of the Night's Watch. I took vows. I renounced all claims. You took those vows believing you were a bastard with no claim to renounce, Mormont interrupted. If you're Rhaegar's legitimate son, if you have a claim to the Iron Throne, then your vows were taken under false pretenses. They could be set aside. I don't want them set aside, Jon said. The words came out more forcefully than he intended. Lord Commander, I chose the Watch, chose to serve. That doesn't change because of who my father was. Doesn't it? Mormont asked. Jon, listen to me. I've spent my life serving the Watch. I understand the vows, the commitment, the sacrifice, but I also understand duty, and if what your brother says is true, you have a duty that's bigger than the Watch, a duty to the realm. The realm has a king, Jon said. Several kings, from what I hear. Joffrey, Stannis, Renly. They can fight over the throne. I want no part of it. Joffrey is a bastard born of incest, Mormont said bluntly. Everyone knows it, even if they won't say it publicly. Stannis and Renly are Robert's brothers, but Robert took the throne by conquest, not by right. If you're Rhaegar's legitimate son, you're the Crown Prince's heir. You have the strongest legal claim in the realm. I don't want it, Jon said. I don't want any of it. I want to serve here, at the Wall, protecting the realm from what's coming. What's coming? Mormont leaned forward. Jon, you've seen the dead men, the others. You know the threat is real. But who do you think can marshal the realm's forces to fight that threat? A bastard king born of incest? Two brothers fighting each other for a crown? Or a legitimate heir with Targaryen and Stark blood both? Someone who could unite the North and South? Someone who the realm might actually follow? Jon had no answer, because Mormont was right. The others were coming. The long night was coming. He'd seen it in his dreams, felt it in his bones. The wall was the only thing standing between the realms of men and the darkness beyond. But preparing for that fight required a united realm, required resources, armies, leaders who could see past their immediate squabbles to the existential threat facing them all. "I'm not that person," Jon said. "I'm not a leader, not a king. I'm just your Ned Stark's son in every way that matters," Mormont said. "You have his honor, his sense of duty, his ability to inspire loyalty. I've watched you, Jon, watched you train with the recruits, watched you defend Sam when others would have let him fail, watched you try to desert to help your brother despite knowing it meant death. You're exactly the kind of person who could unite the realm, if you'd let yourself try." "I took vows," Jon repeated stubbornly. "I swore to wear no crowns, to hold no lands, to father no children. Those vows mean something to me. They're all I have." "They're not all you have," Mormont said gently. "You have family. You have a claim. You have a chance to do something bigger than yourself. The question is whether you're brave enough to take it." Jon wanted to argue, wanted to insist that staying at the wall was the brave choice, the honorable choice, the right choice. But a small voice in his head, one that sounded like his father, whispered doubt. Ned Stark had kept Jon's secret for 14 years, had lived with dishonor, had let everyone think he'd broken his wedding vows, all to protect Jon, all to give him a chance at life. And his final act had been to legitimize Jon, to acknowledge the truth, to tell Jon who he really was. Why? Why would his father do that unless he believed Jon needed to know? Unless he believed Jon had a role to play that required knowing his true parentage? "I need time," Jon said. "Time to think, to pray, to—" "You don't have much time," Mormont said. "The realm is tearing itself apart. Every day you delay is a day the Lannisters get stronger. A day Stannis and Renly waste fighting each other instead of preparing for what's coming. Your brother needs an answer. The realm needs an answer." "The realm doesn't even know I exist," Jon said. "It will," Mormont replied. "The moment you leave the wall, if you leave the wall, every eye will turn to you. Every lord will be calculating whether to support you or oppose you. You'll become the most important person in the Seven Kingdoms, whether you want it or not." Jon stood abruptly. "I need to go. Need to be alone. Think about this. Take all the time you need," Mormont said. "But Jon, whatever you decide, decide it honestly. Don't hide from this because it's hard. Don't refuse your birthright because you're afraid. Your father didn't raise a coward." "No," Jon agreed quietly. He didn't. He left Mormont's chambers and walked through Castle Black in a daze. Everything looked the same. The buildings, the training yard, the wall looming overhead. But everything felt different. Alien. Wrong. He wasn't Jon Snow, bastard of Winterfell. He was Jon Targaryen. No, Jon Stark, according to his father's legitimization. Son of Rhaegar and Lyanna. Prince. Heir. Claimant to a throne he'd never wanted. He found himself in the Godswood. The heart tree here was a weirwood, its white bark and red leaves stark against the snow. The face carved into it watched him with knowing eyes. Jon knelt before the tree, placed his hands on the cold bark, and prayed, not in words. He didn't know the right words, didn't know what to ask for, just let his confusion and fear and uncertainty wash over him. Let the old gods, if they were listening, see his heart. "I don't know what to do," Jon thought desperately. "I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what Father wanted from me. I don't know what's right." The tree offered no answers, no divine guidance, just silence and the wind through the branches. But gradually, as Jon knelt there in the cold, some clarity came. His father had hidden the truth to protect him, had lived with dishonor for 14 years, had done everything possible to keep Jon safe, and then, at the end, had revealed the truth, had legitimized Jon, had given him a choice. Stay at the wall, honor the vows, live as a brother of the Night's Watch, or leave. Claim the birthright, take the throne, It was Jon's choice, no one else's. His father had given him that gift, the freedom to decide his own future. The question was, what did Jon want? He thought of Robb, his brother, his cousin, leading armies at 15, carrying burdens he'd never sought, fighting wars he didn't want, all because duty demanded it. He thought of the others, the dead men walking, the long night coming, the threat that no one else seemed to understand or prepare for. He thought of the realm tearing itself apart, Lannisters and Baratheons and Starks all fighting while the real enemy gathered beyond the wall. And he thought of his vows. I shall wear no crowns and win no glory. I shall live and die at my post. I pledge my life and honor to the Night's Watch, for this night and all the nights to come. He had meant those vows, still meant them. The watch was important, necessary, the only thing standing between the realm and the darkness. But Mormont was right. The watch couldn't stand alone, couldn't protect the realm if the realm was too busy fighting itself to notice the real threat. Someone needed to unite the kingdoms, prepare for what was coming, marshal forces and resources for the war that mattered. Could Jon do that? Could he be that person? I lived in Robb's shadow, Jon thought. He was better than me at everything. Leadership, fighting, ruling. I'm not the person people follow. I'm the person who follows. But another voice, this one sounding like Maester Aemon, whispered back, what is honor compared to a woman's love? What is duty against the feel of a newborn son in your arms? We are only human, and the gods have fashioned us for love. That is our great glory and our great tragedy. Aemon had refused the crown, had chosen the watch over kingship, had lived his whole life serving rather than ruling. But Aemon had also told Jon, a craven can be as brave as any man when there is nothing to fear. And we all do our duty when there is no cost to it. How easy it seems then to walk the path of honor. Yet soon or late in every man's life comes a day when it is not easy, a day when he must choose. This was Jon's day, his choice, and there was no easy answer. Stay at the wall and the realm tears itself apart while the others gather strength. Leave the wall and abandon his vows. Abandon his brothers. Abandon the duty he'd sworn to uphold. Either choice had a cost. Either choice meant sacrifice. Jon stood, looked up at the heart tree's face, made his decision. 3 weeks later, Jon's response reached River Run. Robb broke the seal with shaking hands. Grey Wind pressed against his leg, sensing his anxiety. Catelyn stood beside him, her face tense. The Great Jon, Edmure Tully, and the Blackfish were also present. They had insisted on hearing Jon's answer immediately. Robb read, Robb, I've read your letter 100 times. Read Father's letters as well. Lord Commander Mormont allowed me to see them. And I still can't quite believe it's true. I'm Rhaegar Targaryen's son, Lyanna Stark's son. Not a bastard, not father's shame. Something else entirely. You asked what I want. That's the hardest question anyone's ever asked me. Part of me wants to stay here, at the wall, with my brothers, doing the duty I swore to do. The vows I took mean everything to me. They gave me purpose, identity, a place where I belonged. But another part of me, the part that tried to desert to help you, the part that Father raised to understand duty, knows that I can't hide from this. Can't pretend I don't have a responsibility bigger than myself. The realm is tearing itself apart. The Lannisters murdered Father. They hold Sansa and maybe Arya. Stannis and Renly are fighting each other instead of the real enemies. And beyond the wall, something worse is coming. Something that will destroy us all if we're not ready. I can't fix all of that from Castle Black. Can't unite the realm or prepare for what's coming by standing watch on the wall. As much as I want to keep my vows, I know they're not enough. Not anymore. So here's my answer. I'll come south. I'll accept Father's legitimization. I'll acknowledge who I am and what that means. But I have conditions. First, I'm not claiming the Iron Throne. Not yet. Not until this war is won and the realm is stable enough that my claim won't make things worse. I'll fight beside you as Jon Stark Father's legitimized son, not as Jon Targaryen, pretender king. Second, I need proof. Howland Reed was at the Tower of Joy. He knows the truth about my parents' marriage. I won't claim Targaryen legitimacy without witnesses who can verify it. Until then, I'm just a Stark, nothing more. Third, when this war is over, when the Lannisters are defeated and the realm is at peace, we convene a great council. Let the lords decide who should rule. If they choose me, I'll accept it. If they choose someone else, I'll support that decision and return to the wall. I know these conditions make everything more complicated. I know you wanted a simple answer, but I can't give you one. All I can offer is this. I'll come south. I'll fight beside you. I'll be Pack. But I won't tear the realm apart claiming a throne I'm not certain I deserve. Not until we've proven the truth and given the lords a chance to choose freely. Is that enough? Will the North accept those terms? I'll be leaving Castle Black within a week. Lord Commander Mormont is releasing me from my vows. Reluctantly, but he agrees that the realm's need is greater than the Watch's. I'll ride for River Run as fast as I can. With luck, I'll reach you within a month. Until then, stay safe, win your battles, and know that whatever happens, whatever the lords decide, you're still my brother. That doesn't change. Jon Robb lowered the letter slowly, looked around at the assembled faces, saw calculation in the great Jon's eyes, concern in his mother's, satisfaction in the Blackfish's weathered features. Well, the great Jon demanded, what does the boy say? Is he coming or staying? He's coming, Robb said. He handed the letter to his mother. He accepts father's legitimization, acknowledges he's Lyanna's son, but he won't claim the throne until the war is won and the lords have a chance to choose in a great council. A great council, Edmure repeated. That's wise. Gives everyone a voice. Makes it harder for people to claim he's seizing power illegitimately. It also delays everything, the great Jon said. We're in the middle of a war. We don't have time for councils and debates. We need to know now, are we fighting for Jon's claim or not? We're fighting to defeat the Lannisters, Robb said firmly. To rescue my sisters. To win justice for my father. Jon's claim is a question for after we win, not before. Catelyn finished reading the letter. He's being cautious, smart. He knows claiming the throne immediately would fracture the realm further, so he's presenting himself as Jon Stark, Ned's legitimized son, not as Jon Targaryen, Targaryen heir. That gives people time to adjust, to accept him as a Stark before dealing with the Targaryen half. Will it work? Robb asked. I don't know, Catelyn admitted, but it's better than the alternative. If Jon had claimed the throne immediately, demanded we all kneel to him, half the North would have rebelled. This way, he's asking for patience. For proof, for a chance to earn support rather than demanding it. And he wants Howland Reed, the Blackfish observed. Wants witnesses to verify the marriage. That's crucial. Without proof, Jon's claim is just speculation. With Reed's testimony, it becomes fact. Assuming Reed confirms father's story, Robb said. What if he doesn't? What if there was no marriage? What if Jon really is a bastard? Then we deal with that truth when it comes, the great Jon said. But I'll tell you this much. Jon's letter sounds like a Stark. Honorable. Cautious. Thinking about the realm instead of himself. That's worth something. Maybe worth a lot. You'd support him? Robb asked, surprised. I didn't say that, the great Jon replied. I said his letter sounds like a Stark. But he's still half Targaryen. Still the Mad King's grandson. Those facts don't change because he writes a pretty letter about great councils and waiting for proof. But you'll wait, Robb pressed. You'll give him a chance to prove himself? The great Jon was silent for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'll wait. I'll give the boy a chance to stand before us. To make his case, to show us he's Ned Stark's nephew and not just Aerys Targaryen's grandson. But if he proves to be more dragon than wolf, he left the threat unfinished. Understood, Robb said. We'll wait for Jon. Wait for Howland Reed. Gather all the evidence. Then make decisions based on facts, not assumptions. And in the meantime, Edmure asked, the war continues. The Lannisters are regrouping. Jaime's still our prisoner, but Tywin has other sons, other commanders. They won't stay passive while we debate Jon's legitimacy. Then we don't give them the chance, Robb said. We press our advantage. Use Jaime as a hostage to negotiate Sansa's release. Coordinate with the Riverlands forces. Make sure the Lannisters know we're still a threat. What about Stannis and Renly? The Blackfish asked. Do we contact them? Tell them about Jon? Not yet, Catelyn said quickly. If word reaches them that there's a Targaryen claimant, they might unite against Jon instead of fighting each other. We need to keep Jon's identity secret until we're ready to reveal it publicly. Secrets have a way of getting out, the great Jon observed. Half the camp already knows something happened. Knows you received letters from Ned? Knows there was some revelation about Jon Snow. You think they haven't been speculating? Spreading rumors? Rumors aren't proof, Robb said, and I've forbidden anyone from speaking about Jon's parentage publicly. Anyone who violates that order will be punished. You can't stop tongues from wagging, the great Jon said. But you can control the narrative. If rumors are spreading anyway, might be better to get ahead of them. Tell the truth on your terms, instead of letting gossip shape the story. Not until Jon arrives, Robb said firmly. Not until he's here to speak for himself. I won't let people judge him based on letters and second-hand accounts. They need to meet him, see him, hear him. Then they can decide. The council ended. Lords dispersed to their duties. Catelyn lingered with Robb, watching her son stare at Jon's letter as if it held answers to questions he hadn't yet thought to ask. You're afraid, Catelyn said quietly. Terrified, Robb admitted. Jon's coming south. Everything's about to change, and I have no idea if the North will accept him or tear itself apart. The North will follow you, Catelyn said. Whatever you decide, whatever you support, they'll follow. You're Ned Stark's son, the young wolf. They trust you, for now, Robb said. But once Jon arrives, once people see a Targaryen in the flesh, that trust might evaporate. They might decide I'm a traitor for supporting him, might abandon me the way Kartok did. Then you make sure Jon proves himself worthy, Catelyn said. Make sure he shows the North that he's more Stark than Targaryen, more pack than dragon. If you can do that, if Jon can do that, maybe you have a chance. And if we can't? Robb asked. Catelyn had no answer, because if Jon couldn't prove himself, if the North rejected him, then everything Ned had sacrificed, his honor, his reputation, his life, would have been for nothing. And House Stark would tear itself apart over a secret that should have stayed buried. Jon Snow left Castle Black on a gray morning with snow falling. He wore black, not the formal blacks of the Night's Watch, but travel clothing, practical and warm. His sword hung at his side. Ghost walked beside him, the white direwolf drawing stares from everyone they passed. The brothers of the Night's Watch had gathered to see him off. Most looked confused. Some looked betrayed. A few looked understanding. Sam stood at the front, tears running down his face. You're really leaving? I have to, Jon said. Duty calls me south. You swore vows, Sam said. You swore to stay, to serve, to... I know what I swore, Jon interrupted gently. And breaking those vows is the hardest thing I've ever done. But Sam, there are bigger things at stake than my honor. The realm is tearing itself apart. My family needs me. And if I can help stop the war, can help unite the kingdoms before the real enemy comes, then breaking my vows is worth it. Will you come back? Sam asked. After the war? After everything's settled? I don't know, Jon admitted. I don't know what the future holds. But Sam, you'll make a fine brother of the Watch. You're braver than you think. Smarter than most. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. He embraced Sam, then turned to the others. Gren, Pip, Ed, the brothers who had become his family. Take care of each other, Jon said. Defend the wall. Prepare for what's coming. And if I can send help, if I can convince the realm that the Watch matters, I will. I promise. Lord Commander Mormont stood at the gate. Jon Snow. Or should I say Jon Stark? Or Jon Targaryen? Just Jon, Jon said. Until I figure out which name fits. Whichever name you choose, remember what you learned here, Mormont said. Remember your vows, even if you can't keep them. Remember what it means to serve something bigger than yourself. And remember that the realm needs defenders. Needs people willing to stand against the darkness. Whether you do that from the wall or from a throne, that duty remains. I'll remember, Jon promised. He mounted his horse. Ghost fell into pace beside him, and together they rode south, through the gate, away from Castle Black. Jon looked back once, saw the wall looming behind him, massive and eternal, saw the brothers watching from the battlements, saw the life he was leaving behind. Then he turned forward and rode toward River Run, toward Robb, toward a future he couldn't predict and didn't fully want, but toward duty, toward family, toward the truth about who he really was. The ride south took 3 weeks. Jon traveled alone, except for Ghost, avoiding populated areas, moving quickly. He didn't want to be recognized, didn't want word spreading that Jon Snow had left the wall, not until he reached River Run and could control the narrative. But he had plenty of time to think, to question, to doubt. What am I doing? Jon wondered as he rode through forests and across rivers. I'm abandoning my vows, abandoning my brothers. For what? A claim I don't even want? A crown I never sought? But he also remembered his father's lessons. The man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. If you would take a man's life, you owe it to him to look into his eyes and hear his final words. Ned Stark had lived by principles, by honor, by doing what was right even when it was hard. He had protected Jon for 14 years, living with dishonor, because it was the right thing to do. Now Jon had to honor that sacrifice, had to be worthy of his father's protection, had to prove that Ned Stark's faith in him wasn't misplaced. I don't know if I can do this, Jon thought. Don't know if I'm strong enough, brave enough, worthy enough. But he kept riding, because turning back wasn't an option. Not anymore. Ghost ranged ahead, hunting, always returning with some small game to supplement their supplies. The direwolf seemed to understand the journey's importance, seemed to sense Jon's turmoil and offer silent comfort. On the 18th day, Jon crossed into the Riverlands proper. The land here showed signs of war, burned villages, abandoned farms, refugees on the roads. The Lannisters and Starks had fought through this territory, leaving destruction in their wake. Jon helped where he could, shared food with starving families, pointed refugees toward safer areas. Small gestures that accomplished little but made him feel marginally less useless. And always in the back of his mind the question, what will Robb say when he sees me? What will the Northern Lords say? Will they accept me or reject me? On the 21st day he saw Riverrun in the distance. The castle sat at the confluence of two rivers, its walls high and strong, banners flying. The golden trout of House Tully, the grey direwolf of House Stark. And now, riding toward those walls, came Jon Snow, no, Jon Targaryen. A boy who didn't know his own name, who carried two bloodlines, who had a claim he didn't want and a future he couldn't predict, but who was coming home, to family, to pack. Whatever happened next, whatever the Northern Lords decided, Jon would face it with his head high and his honor intact. Because he was Ned Stark's son in every way that mattered, and Ned Stark had taught him that honor was worth dying for, even if it meant living with impossible choices. Ghost howled as they approached Riverrun's gates, a long, mournful sound that echoed across the Riverlands. And from inside the castle, another direwolf answered. Grey Wind, Robb's wolf, the pack calling to pack, Jon spurred his horse forward, rode toward the gates, toward his brother, toward his future, and the North held its breath, waiting to see whether the boy who returned would be their salvation or their destruction. Epilogue. The fractured Jon Snow's arrival at Riverrun changed everything and nothing. Robb embraced him, wept, introduced him to the assembled lords as my cousin, Jon Stark, legitimized by my father's decree, not Jon Targaryen. Not the prince, not the heir, just Jon Stark, Ned's nephew, a member of the pack. The Northern Lords studied him with suspicion and curiosity, saw a boy of 15 who looked like a Stark, dark hair, gray eyes, long face, heard him speak with Northern accent, watched him defer to Robb in all things, and slowly, grudgingly, some of them began to accept him, not as a Targaryen, not as a king, but as what he claimed to be, a Stark. Lyanna's son, one of them, but others, Lord Karstark's faction, houses that remembered the Mad King too vividly, lords who feared what Jon represented, they withdrew, quietly, slowly, returning to their lands with excuses about defending the North from raiders. Robb's host fractured, not catastrophically, not immediately, surely, until he commanded perhaps 2/3 of the force that had crowned him king in the North, and Howland Reed never came. Riders searched the neck for weeks, found nothing. Greywater Watch had moved, and the Crannogmen weren't sharing its location. Whether Reed was hiding deliberately or simply unreachable, the result was the same. No witness, no proof, no verification of Rhaegar and Lyanna's marriage. Without proof, Jon's Targaryen claim remained speculation, remained a secret the North whispered about but couldn't confirm. So Jon fought as Jon Stark, stood beside Robb in battles, proved himself brave and capable and honorable, won grudging respect from some lords, maintained suspicion from others, and the question remained unanswered. Was he truly Rhaegar's legitimate son, or just another bastard with a story? The North didn't know, and without knowing, they couldn't decide whether to crown him or condemn him. So the war continued. The Lannisters fought, the Baratheons fought. And in the middle of it all, Jon Snow, Jon Stark, Jon Targaryen, fought beside his brother and tried to be worthy of a father who had died protecting his secret. A secret that had fractured the North, divided families, created doubt where there had been certainty. Ned Stark had kept his promise to Lyanna, had protected Jon for 14 years, had given him legitimacy and truth and choices. But in doing so, he had also given the North an impossible burden, a truth that divided more than it united, a revelation that created more questions than answers. And Jon lived with that burden every day, knowing that his existence had torn apart the unity Ned had spent a lifetime building, knowing that some men fought for him while others abandoned Robb because of him, knowing that he was simultaneously the North's hope and its greatest source of division. Was it worth it, Father? Jon wondered sometimes in the quiet moments before battle. Was protecting me worth fracturing everything you built? He had no answer. Just duty, just honor, just the vows he'd broken and the vows he now kept. Just the knowledge that he was Pack, and the Pack had to survive. Even if that survival came at a terrible price. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The End.